Let's begin.
Great. Hello, everyone. I am Neil Seldman, Zero Waste USA. I direct the Recycling Cornucopia project. But today I'm hosting this meeting for our COOLNow program, which is headed up by Rick Anthony and which is administered by Chris Sparnick, our technical guru. And welcome, everyone. We have terrific speakers today. And I want to point out that tomorrow, Zero Waste USA has an equally compelling webinar on climate pollution reduction grants, how to identify them and how to apply. And that's going to start at 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. We look forward to you joining there. I'm going to give a little pan to composting. It does so much. Some of us refer to composting as a magic bullet in the zero waste movement. We all know that composting builds our soil, it cleans our atmosphere, conserves water, and sequesters carbon. It is literally the antidote to global warming. It also creates jobs in collection and processing and sales, and these ripple through the local economy. The composting has two other important aspects. It is politically correct to compost. Each time we take a ton out of the waste stream of materials, it is less material that the monopolistic waste haulers and landfill owners get their hands on. And finally, composting in your backyard helps build your young people's IQ, which is very important. It's intergenerational, and it is a nice fix-it for so many of our problems. The economy of scale does not exist. You could compost in your backyard. You can compost in your kitchen with worms. The impact is dramatic. It's 35, organics are about 35% of the waste stream. Composting was my first project at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance years ago. We set up a system with a 3-bunker system. We composted the food waste food discards coming from the cooperative restaurants in Adams Morgan. And you could read all about that in Neighborhood Power, which was a book we wrote about our early days of starting at the Institute. And finally, composting, good compost has a market year round, and it's a local market. So for those reasons, I believe you could understand why we can call it a magic bullet. Today, we are going to have presentations from Marvin Hayes, Baltimore Community Compost Collective, and Dan Brown from Rest Belt Riders in Cleveland. These organizations represent communities that have a vast, wide range of population. South Baltimore has about 30,000 people in it, and Cleveland has about 400,000 people living in the city. And the purpose of this webinar is to pick the brains of Dan and Marvin and to show that composting succeeds at the neighborhood level and can expand to an entire municipal area. And with that having been said, I want to introduce Marvin Hayes. Marvin is a product of West Baltimore. He spent 30 years in youth programming in Baltimore. He caught compost fever, as he puts it, a few years ago. And he uses his skills to train young people in entrepreneurship, character building, job readiness, and to be ambassadors or voices for the environmental justice and zero waste movement. I also will add that he's a skilled silk screener And you can also have a good game of billiards with Marvin if you're in Baltimore and care to hang out with him. And with that, I'd like to introduce Marvin. And Marvin, please take it away.
Excellent, excellent. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Marvin Hayes, and I'm the Executive Director for the Baltimore Compost Collective, and we are a youth-led food scrap collection service. As Neil has already explained to you guys that I am contagious. I am a long haul of compost fever, and me and my youth are responsible for spreading a composting pandemic throughout Baltimore City, where we're diverting our organic material from being burnt or buried. Our slogan at the Baltimore Compost Collective is compost, learn so you don't have to burn. Starve the incinerator, feed the soil, and feed the community. So we spread compost fever through the variant of education. So we go out and we educate our youth through from Ben Franklin High School, a local high school in South Baltimore. We train them in small scale composting. I have a treat for you guys today. I could tell you all about our program, but I had the honor and a special guest today. I have my youth composter, Mr. Kenneth Moss, here with me, and he's going to introduce the program and introduce his film that he created called Compost Fever. And it talks about his work in Baltimore and about him being an environmental justice leader for his voiceless community in Curtis Bay. Kenneth started the Baltimore Compost Collective 5 years ago when he was 15 years old. He has not missed a day or been late. He dedicates his Sundays and Tuesdays to pick up food scraps throughout Baltimore. Currently, we are diverting about 2,000 pounds on a weekly basis from being burnt or buried in our incinerator. Kenneth started his own business at the age of 16 through his entrepreneurial skills that he learned at the Baltimore Compost Collective. So he started his own business called Kenneth Captures. He had his EIN and LLC by the age of 16. Now he used those skills that he's learned through his photography business and through his entrepreneurial skills through the Baltimore Compost Collective to run his own business and created the film called The Compost Fever, which you will have an opportunity to watch today. Kenneth is an amazing young man and such a powerhouse for Baltimore, spreading compost fever. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my youth composter, Mr. Kenneth Moss, owner and operator of Kenneth Captures, just a young man with a camera. He's now 20 years old. It was a kid with a camera, but now it's a young man with a camera. So please help me bring Mr. Kenneth Moss to you to introduce and tell you about the Baltimore Compost Collective.
Hello, my name is Kenneth Moss, and I'm youth composter for the Baltimore Compost Collective. Like we said before, we are a youth-led food scrap collection service. We serve about 12 different communities throughout Baltimore City, and we bring all of that food scraps back to a local community garden in the South Baltimore neighborhood called the Filbert Street Garden. Also, where I live, Brooklyn Curtis Bay community, where we divert about 24 tons of food scraps each year from going into the landfills and incinerators. And we give out job opportunities to local high schools in the community and people who don't have the chance to get to grow a tomato or get to see a pizza garden being built or get to see bat houses or turtles or frogs around in the community. They just don't have a chance. So we had that Filbert Street Garden for them to have a good place to learn about things they might not have experienced before. And so we made this movie called Compost Fever that's to spread compost fever around Baltimore City. So it's really talking about the South Baltimore community where we have three incinerators in the Baltimore City, where one is Bresco, where it creates $55 million in health damages every year to communities. And we have the John Hopkins Medical Incinerator right in the back of Curtis Bay, where the John Hopkins burn their medical waste. And we have a landfill that sits my fault, a coal plant that sits right across from a recreation where kids play. And we also have a kerosene express plant all the way in the back of Curtis Bay with a fleet of trucks with toxic chemicals fly applies every 24 hours. And so we made this movie just to spread compost fever and show what we doing up in Baltimore City and the South Baltimore community. Thank you. Hope you really like it and get that compost feed. Oh, Mr. Neil, you could play the video if you don't mind.
Injustice when it happens to just us. I couldn't get it out. I was choking on the coal dust. Right where our children attempt to play, the time for change is a must. Marvin, why are you making a big deal? What's the fuss? You son of a gun, you almost made me cuss. You'll let our babies die to fatten your pockets until they bust. You kill us all for the money that you lust. We don't have to burn or bury our organic material. It's time to compost and adjust. I won't stop until I see the incinerator raised and crumbled into dust. Let's take a stand for compost and make the world a better place for all of us.
Hello, my name is Kenneth Moss. I work for the Baltimore Compost Collective. The Baltimore Compost Collective is a youth-led food scrap collection service that serves customers that live in Federal Hill, Riverside, Locust Point, Cedar Croft, Mount Washington, Brooklyn, and Curtis Bay, where we bring food scraps to a local community garden and compost and turn them to black gold soil enhancer for residents that don't have access to green space. I grew my first tomato here when I was 6 years old, and it's been in my life ever since then.
I became interested in the Filbert Street Garden where I was taking care of my mom, and I had small kids, and when I get off work, I just had a place where I wanted to take them so they could run around and enjoy themselves. So we went to the Filbert Street Garden. There, my son, who was 6 at the time, he was interested in how plants grow. So he grew his first tomato plant there, and we became involved with the Filbert Street Garden.
Through the Filbert Street Garden, I got a lot of opportunities by having a chance to work with the Baltimore Compost Collective and the Be More Beautiful block cabins where we picked up trash in nearby neighborhoods.
I thought that you as a Be More Beautiful block captain should be exposed to composting as a youth, one, to understand like the food cycle and how, you know, when we eat stuff or when we throw things away, like that's not the end of the cycle.
It gave me a chance to expand my horizon in composting and environmental justice. Composting and environmental justice is important in my neighborhood because there are incinerators near my neighborhood, which caused $55 million in health damages. And we have a coal plant right across from a recreation center where kids play.
In 2006, I became a homeowner, and my late husband had asthma, and there was this strange smell when we would come outside. It was sickening. So I'm glad the Baltimore Compost Collective is in our community to get rid of this incinerator because it's ruining our health. And I'm so glad that my son is there to help because he's very important to our community.
I got great news. So we are one of the first electric composting facilities in the nation. So we have an all-electric fleet, which starts with our all-electric vehicle, which provides us with more space to divert 1,200 more pounds on a weekly basis. And we have 2 electric bicycles where we will be processing to start our electric bicycle collection service. Through the Baltimore Compost Collective, it has gave me the ability to pursue my business with success by showing me ways of being more, giving great customer service, because without that you can't get any customers. Also, it be on time and courteous of other people's time. I applied that to Kenny Captures by creating like a website so I could look more professional, creating a layout, a portfolio, having a portfolio of my photography work. Also getting some merch, Kenny Captures merch.
Watching Kenny grow into a leader has been heartwarming, and especially making it personal and really taking on the challenge of recycling food waste, because it is a labor-intensive job.
Compost fever is giving that green energy. Like you want to be green, the biggest green machine there is. So our slogan is learn so you don't have to burn, stop the incinerator, feed the soil, feed the community. So we live by the slogan so everybody can learn so you don't have to burn, and you can stop that incinerator that you breathing in that bad air.
Incineration is really bad. It's bad for the environment, it's bad for our health. As a physician, learned about incineration. It is bad stuff. And if you were to do one thing to cut down on incineration, the easiest thing would be separate the food scraps. It's about 1/3 of what goes in an incinerator.
When I look at composting, the first thing I think about is just a mile away from here in Locust Point, there's an incinerator. And at least 40% of everything that is burned in that incinerator is compostable material. This is something that is being burned and put into our lungs. It is causing a greenhouse gas, and then it has to be disposed of in our landfill. So it's a triple loss for us as far as our society. So when I look at composting, it takes care of this problem. It's easy, it's very efficient, and when you do things with compost, you can actually build the soil, enrich the soil, and then help feed us all.
I'm very excited about composting being an option to help reduce chemicals in our community, and to also help feed the soil and help us to grow fresh fruit and vegetables.
They really work with youth in our area and really empower them in careers and opportunities, and so it really builds our neighborhoods. So it's not like an outside company coming in and doing everything outside of Baltimore. This is a Baltimore company building Baltimore.
It's been a long journey down environmental justice road. That smokestack create cleaner, greener energy is what we were told. In order to shut it down, we must have unity. So I went on a composting mission with the youth to feed the soil and feed the community. While others took blood money from the incinerator, I remained the environmental OG and stayed to the code. Frustrated, locked myself in Filbert Street Garden, teaching the youth how to make that black gold. Being a voice for the voiceless was my goal. We did our research. Because we poor, we gotta breathe in cold. When I think about it, I get infuriated. Tell me why must our organic waste be incinerated? Breathing in carbon dioxide and methane gas must be of the past. I ask you, how long will this environmental injustice last? We don't got much time, so we must move fast. Composting is the member of this supporting cast. Great for the climate to reduce harmful greenhouse gas. In my city, environmental racism is dominant. But when you add compost to the soil, it sequesters carbon, and so great for the environment. So if your ear is within my range, let's continue to spread compost fever to combat climate change.
This relationship has allowed me to get to know Kenny and Marvin. I wouldn't have known, and these are two really great people, and there's a Yiddish expression, Gute Neshama, a Gute Neshama, and a really good heart. So this work is a passion of theirs, and it helps all of us. So I'm very glad to know about Kenny. So keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Let's give a couple snaps to our director of compost fever and my youth composter, Mr. Kenneth Moss, see what happens when we just provide support for our young people and how composting can be used as a carrot to expose you to the carrot to add development, job readiness skills, entrepreneurial skills. So we just have to support our youth, and we provide them support, they can make change. And hopefully this will be the start to no incineration or burying of our organic material here in Baltimore. So I'm going to hit a couple things on the slide to let you guys know some things we've been up to, and then I'm going to wrap up with how we can support today's indomitable youth, because this generation can use their imagination and innovation to create social change. So we can start the slide, please. Excellent. We are a staff of 3, so I'm so pleased and want to give a big shout out to Sophie Ragul, my executive assistant and grant writer. Thank you, Sophie, my double secret backup. And you've already met Mr. Kenneth Moss, my youth composter, my right-hand man. I work for him. I do what he tells me to. I pick up the scraps to drive, make rights, and stop. And as we say, we provide excellent customer service. Next slide, please. Excellent, excellent. As Kenny has told you, in 2023, we averaged about 2,000 pounds per week and collect increase over 100% in 2022. In 2023, we have collected over 43 tons in a yearly basis. So really, really excited about that. And like I say, Kenneth is with me side by side every Sunday and Tuesday as we go up and pick up those scraps. Next slide, please. Excellent. Compost fever, spreading education. We have brought in, reached over 44,000 people, including 200 youth, because you know when you teach youth to compost when they're young, they will always compost. And we've been so blessed to be on podcasts and over 20,000 views online. Next slide. Excellent, excellent. If you have an opportunity, you can check out, these are all on the Baltimore Compost Collective website in our news and gallery section. YPR, my block counts. Been in several news articles, really excited about the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, EPA video that talks about community composting. Please check that out. We are spreading compost love to stop hate throughout. We were profiled a lot when we first started out. We were people that were taking buckets off of people's front and putting it in this van. We don't know what they're doing with it. And through teaching the youth just how to do an elevator pitch, we were able to start off. We started off with 5 people. Now we have over 300 customers that we serve. And like you say, what Kenny said, in 12 different communities throughout. Kenny has spoke at the USC Compost conference convention, and we're looking forward to joining Rust Belt Riders at the Community Compost Convention in Cleveland in October. So very excited about that opportunity. And Kenny's film was debuted at New Orleans University's Environmental Justice film series, where he was able to show the film Compost Fever that you guys had the opportunity, and we hope that you enjoyed it and that you caught the fever. Next slide. Excellent. Generating excitement about community composting in urban marginalized communities. This is our job. We want to be able to educate. We know composting sometimes has been a privilege. A lot of people haven't participated in compost, not because they didn't want to, it's because they didn't know. So our job is to give people the best practices for composting, following the Institute for Local Self-Reliance Composting 101 Soil Builder Program. So we go around and we educate. We provide home composting classes for the Baltimore City DPW Growth Center, where you can receive a free green garden earth system after receiving. So we want to give people the best practices so they don't have urban rabbits or odors. An urban rabbit is a Baltimore City rat. So just want to keep everybody in tune to that. So no urban rabbits and no odors here in Baltimore City. Only enclosed composting system, and you must use quarter-inch cloth. Mouse can fit through anything bigger than a number 2 pencil. Next slide, please. You see, I'm educating as we go along. Excellent. Engagement. So we have definitely been able to do some research. I had amazing intern, Miss Sylvia Lay, who is did the effects of environmental health. Please check that out on our sharing how we can support today's indomitable youth. Kenny had an opportunity to speak at the Refab Food Waste Solution in St. Louis where he talked about his work. And I did a poem called How We Can Support Today's Indomitable Youth. And I will wrap up with that poem. We do workshops once again with the DPW Growth Center, and we've done an amazing thing. Big shout out to Renee in Detroit and Michelle in Detroit. We have been working with Detroit, but they did not have infrastructure for their organic material. So now their landfill is being used. So we have an amazing partnership where we are working to help them create their community composting infrastructure. About 2 months ago, Kenneth went with me and we led a youth-led food scrap composting training where Kenny was my co-instructor and co-facilitator, and we educated about 40 youth from Detroit who are now doing composting right now. So compost is the gift that keeps on giving. Kenny is now able to teach what he's learned with the Baltimore Compost Collective to peers here in Baltimore and even in Detroit. So we remain such a close relationship. I'm sending a lot of compost love to my Detroit family. Thank you so much. A lot of love to Renee and Michelle once again. Next slide.
Got 3 minutes, Marvin.
Yes, okay. I'm wrapping it up. Excellent. So greenwashing, we are having ongoing issues with greenwashing. I hope Daniel can speak a little bit about that. You cannot process organic material in a machine in 24 hours. We have a guy that has this magic machine and claiming that you can make compost in 2 hours. Like it says, it's like comparing a potato to a French fry. So no greenwashing. Stop the greenwashing. There's no way we can make beautiful black gold soil enhancer in 24 hours. We're going to continue to educate people on systems and the importance of diverting that organic material. And our goal is to make an inclusive composting table for Baltimore City. So excited to announce that EPA has gave us funding so we can start our mid-sized compost facility with a transfer station. So really excited. I know a lot of people going to ask me how we can support today's indomitable youth. So I'm going to take 2 minutes just to give you a couple tips. Please have your notes out because I'm going to give you some jewels. I'm going to get started. We teach our youth to shut up and listen, raise their hands and ask for permission, instead of encouraging our youth if they see a problem to make a decision and take a position. As adults, we must take the time to listen. Today's indomitable youth are impossible to subdue or defeat, but often not brought to the table to make it to complete. We make these decisions that impact their future, but we seldom save them a seat. Words without action is just chitter chatter. Today's youth taught us, regardless to our age or race, that all humans matter. Impossible to make solutions from the food that people waste. Youth are the leaders of this food waste movement and must be a part if we want to see any improvements. We must share roles and responsibilities in order to unwrap our youth talents and abilities. Yearn to connect and not correct, and always motivate with respect. I'm going to say that again. Yearn to connect and not to correct, and always motivate with respect. Facilitate, do not delegate. These are ways that adult leaders can motivate and participate. Foster collaborations and watch our youth exceed above all expectations. Show youth appreciation in tangible ways, and most important, don't be stuck in your ways. This should be the adult preamble. It is always important to lead by example. Enlighten and empower our youth and give them, all our youth, the tools that they need to succeed. And our success as a human race is guaranteed. Lead on, my youth, lead on. If your ear is within my range, continue to use your imagination and innovation to help create positive social change. Thank you so much. Sending a lot of compost love from the Baltimore Compost Collective. Please reach out to us on Instagram, Baltimore Compost Collective, and at the BaltimoreCompostCollective.org. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and continue to compost and spread compost fever throughout the world.
Well, thank you, Kenny and Marvin. Please put all your questions in the chat, and we will monitor them and get to them after Dan's presentation. I just want to thank Marvin and Kenny for putting composting in a context of anti-incineration and pro-youth. That was terrific, and congratulations. We're moving on now to, one other thing. I want to thank Brenda for posting the URLs for some of the documents that Marvin and Kenny mentioned. And I also want to thank Chris. He put in the chat the information to get to the compost, the grant webinar that we'll be having tomorrow. Let me move on to Dan now. We've taken a look at what composting could be at the community level. Dan is the co-founder of Rust Belt Riders. He's overseen their growth from a community scale to a municipal scale. He's from Cleveland. He studied ethics, and he got involved through composting because it intersected with three of his interests in community development, community gardens, and his work in a farm-to-table restaurant. And with that, Dan, please present us with what you folks have been doing in Cleveland the last few years.
Awesome, happy to do it. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Marvin and Kenny, thanks for all you're doing. You guys are huge inspirations to us in Cleveland. I really admire your work, so thank you for all the leadership that you've shown. Yeah, so I'm just going to give you a little rundown on who Rust Belt Riders is, what we do. Some of this might be like old hat to a lot of you because I was poking through the attendees, and it seems like lots of you are industry leaders in this. So some of this, like I said, might be old news. But Rust Belt Riders is really trying to highlight a lot of the work that I think is not often like in the highlights of what is at the center of conversations when we talk about the climate crisis. As somebody who both lives in and sort of occupies space in one of the poorest big cities in the United States, in Cleveland, Ohio, oftentimes the solutions to the climate crisis look very expensive and inaccessible to the vast majority of people. And so when we came upon this report called Project Drawdown, it was really this like illuminating beacon of hope that showed that we do not need to wait for techno innovations and interventions to address and rectify the ship that we are on, but instead we need to be scaling and investing in the solutions that are already at hand. And so within this report, they sought to look at what industries globally are driving both driving the challenges to the climate crisis, but also contain within them the solutions to the climate crisis. And to a big surprise to me was that food more so than electricity generation, land use, or materials, even transportation and building, contains within it the greatest potential for solutions of carbon drawdown globally. I think that at first it's surprising, but then the more you sort of dig into it and reflect on our own lived reality, we all are acutely aware of just how broken our food system is, right? Whether it be food apartheid, food insecurity that exists across every major city in the United States, and even in rural communities, our food system is just horribly broken. And so it's in that brokenness where these inefficiencies exist and where the opportunities for climate solutions really arise. If you sort of double click on food, you see at the top of those solutions is reducing food waste. And so more so than eating a plant-rich diet, which we all should be doing anyways, reducing food waste is the single biggest lever that we all have within our food system to make not only a less bad impact, but a positive contribution towards a healthy, more vibrant and resilient community that we all live, want, and deserve. And so in thinking about that, I think, I spoke to just like how broken our food system is. This is my opportunity to get on a pulpit and talk about really depressing statistics that speak to just how broken our food system is. Roughly 40% of all of the food in the United States will be sent to landfill. Food and other organic materials is the single largest component of what comprises our landfills. In Cleveland, where I'm from, 1 in 5 children is considered by the USDA to be food insecure. And if you look at the just amount of money we spend roughly $218 billion annually on the growing, processing, transportation, and disposal of food that never gets eaten. And then thirdly, is all of this material, when sent to landfill, emits methane, and a methane gas on a 20-year time horizon, which is really the scientific consensus is that we need to do everything we can to peak and begin drawing down emissions within that time frame. Methane emissions are roughly 85 times more potent in accelerating climate change than CO2. So at this, I've heard it referred to as the decisive decade we really need to do everything we can to prevent food from entering landfills if we stand even the slightest chance of avoiding 1.5 degrees Celsius rise. So a thing we often talk about is like food waste is this tripod of issues, right? If you have a heart and a moral compass, you should be abhorred by the lack of food access that many members in our community face. So that's one issue. The second issue is this massive environmental issue, and then the third issue, even if you don't care about your neighbors and you don't care about the planet, maybe you care about the almighty dollar. We're spending a lot of money on throwing stuff away, and so we like to think that food waste is not a partisan issue. It's not a political issue. It is just one of using resources to the most advantage that we possibly can. Food system is a system ripe for interventions at all sorts of different scales and sizes and places and parts of the supply chain. And what I'm going to share is how we're doing that. I think it's important to note that like a lot of food waste is preventable. I talk about it as being like the biggest, dumbest problem in the world, because lots of food waste is preventable just through different shopping patterns, eating seasonally, understanding what best by, used by, enjoy by, crispiest by, storage of materials, learning how to ferment and pickle things can really extend the useful life of things. And so there's lots of work that we encourage our community and our clients to take advantage of before their material hits us, right? In a very self-deprecating way, we encourage all of our clients to put us out of business, right? If there is no food waste, we don't need to be here. But at the end of the day, like, and the reason we have a pineapple on this slide is because, like, I don't care how much fermenting and pickling you're going to do that pineapple top, it's not going to be tasty in any way, shape, or form. And so there's an inevitability to some amount of food waste, and we need the infrastructure in place to ensure that when we encounter that material, it is going to the highest and best use possible. And so that's sort of where Rust Belt Riders comes in, is that we needed to first understand, who are these people, these uncaring people that are throwing away so much food, right? Candidly, it's mostly us. It's household waste is roughly 43% of all the generation of food waste in the United States, with another 40% being from businesses and consumer-facing organizations. And so that's really who Rust Belt Riders targets with our services. And so today we offer a bevy of services. We offer commercial or B2B services. We work with around 300 different businesses across Northeast Ohio. We like to say that we sort of provide like a service similar to recycling service, but it's way better. So we provide our clients with bins. They're usually 64-gallon size toters, which you can see pictured here. Our clients are invited to fill that with acceptable material, and we service them at least once a week, exchanging full bins for clean empty bins. And in addition to that, we were weighing and inspecting this material to provide them with impact reports, data, metrics, and ways to engage both their customers and their employees around the importance of this work. We also think that central to this, and Marvin hit on it as well, is that like, if this isn't clean, if this isn't like decidedly better than landfilling, we're not doing our job. And so I think we got to get people excited. We got to get people educated. And we have to really blow people's socks off with excellent customer service, data that like makes them really empowered and feel like they're contributing to something bigger than themselves. And so, so we started in 2014, and just to put all of this in perspective, we started in 2014 with one mountain bike and a trailer welded to the back of it. That's where the name of our organization comes from, Rust Belt Riders. So we were literally picking stuff up 300 pounds at a time. Fast forward to today, we've got a staff of 32 people. Last year, we diverted about 6.5 million pounds of material that otherwise would have been sent to landfill. We are structured as a worker-owned cooperative. We pay a starting wage of $22 an hour for people working more than 30 hours a week. We provide healthcare and benefits to them, PTO, professional development stipends, you name it. We want to be allowing people to realize that you can both do good by doing practices like this at your business, but you can also be supporting really dignified place-based jobs that are going to create generational wealth for communities that have been historically divested from. And so, when we talk about composting is really a metaphor for finding value in forgotten things, right? We have a big chip on our shoulder in Cleveland that like the rest of the country's forgotten about us, and there are neighborhoods that the city has forgotten about and the county has forgotten about. And I think that we're trying to like shine a light on these undervalued resources and really just highlight the value that is inherent within them. And so part of that is engaging residents. And so we're really, really proud that we work with around 3,000 residents across Cleveland. We offer them two types of services. One is a community drop-off program. We have about 30 of these locations across Cleveland where residents can pay a monthly fee, drop off their material, and receive discounts on our products, access our workshops and community events that we try and host somewhat regularly. And we really think that this is the beginning of an infrastructure that we really want to see built out. And so, like I said, we've got about 30 locations today, but if you look in the world of urban planning, there's actually like a lot of emerging conversations around this idea of a 15-minute city. A 15-minute city is this idea that every resident should have access to basic amenities such as libraries, grocery stores, healthcare facilities, and a job within a 15-minute walk of their home. As an organization that is deeply invested in avoiding the very worst impacts of the climate crisis, we believe that composting infrastructure is critical infrastructure. And so we're working really closely with the city of Cleveland to ensure that every Cleveland resident has access to a neighborhood drop-off location within a 15-minute walk of their home. We are soon to announce, hopefully, knock on wood, a USDA grant that will allow us to expand our current drop-off location by 10 additional locations, which will bring 85% of all Cleveland residents to within 15 minutes of a neighborhood drop-off location. And we think that's the kind of both economic development and environmental infrastructure that we need to avoid the worst impacts of the climate crisis. And so here's a little smattering of where some of our locations are now. This was some cool mapping work that we got to do to figure out where we need to place them, what locations are going to have the highest catchment area. And so, yeah, with some funds from the USDA, we're hoping to really catapult that work forward. We also have a home pickup program. Not everybody is super hip to walk into a neighborhood drop-off location. And for them, we have a little bit more expensive of a service. Much like our commercial clients, we provide them with a bin, exchange it for a clean bin, data, metrics, the whole 9 yards. But for us, we believe that inviting people out into the community, getting them walking, getting them going to public parks, getting them going to community gardens is really what's going to build a community around this work. So we'll continue to offer our pickup program, but our effort is dead set on expanding our drop-off program. We've said a lot about like food waste collection and diversion. I think that it's important to note that like the making of compost is the highest and best use of food waste in my view. If you can't eat the food yourselves or feed it to animals, the next best thing to do is to put it into a composting system, and ideally a locally based compost system rather than a large consolidated compost facility elsewhere. We've gotten quite good at making compost. In 2020, we were named the best small-scale composter by the U.S. Composting Council, and we have a really big emphasis on creating really high-quality products out of the material that we create. And I think that's part of what makes our business model a little unique and different. Is that we have a service on one end, and then we have a product arm on the other. But our product arm has been continually hampered by infrastructure. Specifically, there isn't enough infrastructure in Cleveland or in Ohio or nationally to properly compost all the food waste that exists, and we need to be building much more infrastructure. I think that the Biden administration has done a fantastic job expanding people's ideas and conceptions about what infrastructure is, right? Infrastructure is broadband, infrastructure is compost facilities, infrastructure is a lot of things, and we really need infrastructure on the scale of like wastewater management facilities if we're to properly encourage and incentivize cities to manage their own organics. And so what you can see here is an aerial photo of our original site. On the left, that was a 500 square foot facility, which is the maximum allotment allowed as an exemption in the state of Ohio. In 2022, we moved on to a 3-acre site, which you can see here on the right, but our volume quickly exceeded the processing capability of a 3-acre site. And we are now moving on to a 6-acre site, hopefully, again, knock on wood. And I think it's a testament to just our ability to partner with the city of Cleveland in particular. A thing that a lot of people don't know is that roughly 12% of all parcels in the city of Cleveland are vacant or abandoned. And so what may be, again, viewed as a massive deficit to some is for others a massive asset to build out infrastructure in the shell of an old industrial town. And so while it is presently an eyesore and presently an environmental justice issue, right? There are dozens and dozens of large lots that used to have industry on them that can be reborn and reconsidered and reimagined as composting facilities that are going to create the next generation of jobs, that are going to create the next generation of wealth building places to work. And we're hoping that we could be at the vanguard of that. So yeah, I mentioned that Rust Belt Riders provides the services. Tilth Soil is our line of products. The idea behind that is that, you know, we try and get this product into the hands of anybody and everybody that wants quality soil. We're really aiming to make a soil that is well suited to the Great Lakes region. If you think about like how the craft beer industry sort of took off, right? Like the Budweisers of the world will always exist, but like your local home brewery is the people that you really want to support. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is for, you know, make soil for our community, in our community, and knowing what kind of soil conditions our growers need to grow as much food as they can is really the name of the game for us. And so, yeah, so we've had some success building out this line of products. We have a really, really talented member on our team named Nathan Rutz, who knows more about soil than anybody I know. And he's whipped up a really, really excellent potting mix for us. So again, central to the backbone to all of our products is our compost that we make ourselves. But from that, because we don't make so much of it, we needed to mix other high quality horticultural ingredients in it to expand the volume of material that we could offer. And so we have a line of potting soil, houseplant mix, raised bed fill mix, and mixes for the cannabis industry as well, that again, buy year round, buy in quantity, and appreciate quality. And so that's what we've been up to. And that's the little role that we're playing in advancing the circular economy. I think that anybody who's been in this space for any amount of time understands that there's just so much value that's being left on the table, and it provides a tremendous both economic opportunity, but, you know, job creation opportunity for organizations like Marvin's and ours to reimagine and work with communities across the country to say, hey, there are jobs that could be created here. There's infrastructure that could be built here. And if we do that, we're creating wealth while combating waste, and making their prospects for a habitable planet a lot better. So I will stop there.
Great, Dan, a worthy compliment to Marvin and Kenny's presentation. Chris, I'm going to ask you to check out the questions in the chat, but I'm going to start off with one.
Before we start with that, Neil, I would like to first go back to the presentation that we had with the CPR. Bear with me here.
Sure.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that if you are looking for funding or grants in the U.S., don't miss the CPR campaign webinar tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern on accessing EPA grants for community composting. Learn the strategies for strengthening your climate action plan and submit winning product proposals for a share of the $4.6 billion in funding. Featured speakers will also provide guidance on developing holistic plans and model language to qualify and scoring high on composting project applications. This webinar has the insights you need to secure grants for equipment, outreach, and expanding your local composting operation. Seize this opportunity to gain competitive advantage in getting EPA funding for community-based climate solutions. The link should be in the chat already. I'll put it again in the link now. And that's all I needed to say. Thanks.
Chris, you anticipated my first question. And that is to both Marvin, Kenny, and Dan. What have been your sources of capital to date? How did you get the funds to buy your trucks, your buckets, preparing your drop-off locations? Dan, you want to start, and then we'll go to Marvin and Kenny?
Yeah. So I think that oftentimes people will hear my spiel and be like, oh, that you must be a nonprofit. And I think that that's a fair assumption, but we are, at least on paper, a for-profit business, or trying to be. And so, yeah, so we've gone through a lot of, as was mentioned earlier, I studied ethics. My business partner studied social and political philosophy. Our first employee studied philosophy. So we didn't have a business class between any of us. And so we went through a number of business incubators to pitch our idea, And we were able to be pretty successful in winning sort of competitions. Within the first 2 or 3 years, we probably won like $100,000 worth of grant of like free prize money through these efforts. We also didn't pay ourselves for the first like 3 years and reinvested all that money to go from 1 bicycle to 3 bicycles, 3 bicycles to a box truck, or to a van to a box truck. And so it's really truly been quite incremental, but incremental compounded over 10 years has been pretty, has brought us to today. I will say that, you know, we've been able to take advantage of and be good partners to our county and a number of individual municipalities to do pilot programs with the Ohio EPA, with the USDA at the federal level, as well as the federal EPA. More recently, when we converted to formally become a worker-owned cooperative, we actually took on private investment. So we've raised around $850,000 from investors that we will have to pay back. So this isn't like free money, but like, yeah, we tried to find vision and mission aligned folks with money that want to see this work scale, and they've entrusted us to be stewards of those funds, and we're this year we will start making distributions on those payments, which is pretty exciting.
Dan, thank you. A quick follow-up question. Has the Department of Public Works or other agencies in the city, how have they been supportive of you? And if you could just make a short comment on that.
Supportive in partnership, not financially. So we are collaborators with them, but we are not financially supported by them.
So you don't get any shared savings for diverting all the materials. Okay.
Not yet.
Okay, good. Marvin and Kenny, if you could answer those questions, how did you get your capital, and how has the city helped or hindered your operations?
Well, I didn't want to be dependent on grants, so we kind of depend on our funding from our customers, our customer revenue to keep the program operating. So we concentrate a lot on building our customer base, and now we're working on trying to create our own entity to see if it'll be a C Corp, if it'll be a co-op like Rust Belt Riders, along with a very strong nonprofit wing, so that we can continue to create this into a workforce development program, so we can create a bunch of great community youth leaders here in Baltimore. The city has been supportive, as Daniel said, not financially, but just supporting us as partners, allowing us to go out and do training and composting training throughout. We're excited that the DPW now has received funding from the EPA to start a large-scale composting facility or mid-sized composting facility along with the transfer station. So we're working with the city as they are in their planning process to figure out what part we will play in getting youth involved in that process as well.
Yeah. Also, just give an indication, I know you earn money from your honey production. Is that a significant source of income for you?
So that's through Filbert Street Garden. Yes, it's significant. It helps the garden to be self-sustained. So all of we rescue the bees. We work with 311. So anytime there's a swarm of bees, instead of calling an exterminator, they call the beekeepers at Filbert Street Garden. We go out and rescue those bees, bring them back. We provide feeding for them through the compost that we grow, and we are able to sell the honey to maintain Filbert Street Garden. And we use the compost soil enhancer for pollinator gardens for the bees, and that's how the gardeners be sustainable. So we're able to take care of the livestock, we're able to take care of the landscaping, all those things through the bees, but we generate our own income to continue to be able to hire youth from Ben Franklin High School and teach them small-scale composting.
Great. Chris, did you have any other questions?
I see a couple of questions here. The first question has already been answered by Mary Ellen Sullivan, I think. She was asking about, are you getting any funding from the city for the work you're doing? And did you answer that, Dan?
Yes, they both did. Yes.
Right, great. That's what I thought. So the other question that came up was from Gary, Gary Liss asks, are you familiar with how urban ore in Berkeley gets paid by the city the same amount that the city pays the waste disposal, about $50 a ton? Would you consider pursuing that with your cities? Both of you.
Yes, I would consider with partnering with my city. I would love for them to donate a garbage truck so that I can get contracts and work with the city. Right now, we started out with a 14-passenger van and just took the seats out of it and had 73 people supporting us. Now we're over 300 that are supporting and showing that we can do municipal composting here in Baltimore. So I'm hoping that the city will dedicate a large garbage truck so that we can divert more material and get support in that way.
The link for Urban Ore has been put in the chat. Dan, what was your response?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have been trying to elevate the fact that our work, aside from the planet and the people that get to use the finished product that we're making, one of the primary financial beneficiaries of our work is the municipality, right? I mean, we kept out 3,500 tons of material that the city otherwise would have had to pay for, a known amount of money. And, we're not expecting them to cut us a check for every ton that we keep out of material, but out of the landfill. But we would like to see there be some reciprocity or some understanding that the work that we're doing, that our businesses and our subscribers are subsidizing on behalf of our municipality, that would be, we could find an equilibrium there that aligns incentives, right? Because theoretically, if we continue to succeed at our work, we're basically, I could see this being a more intentional public-private partnership, and I think that's ultimately what is taking place in Berkeley. I think that, as I alluded to, the infrastructure needed to support that kind of diversion is significant. And so even if the city wanted us to take in material, there is not reasonably an economical way to process that material presently with the infrastructure that we have. And so what I really want to see the city do and our county do is invest in physical assets and infrastructure that will increase the processing capacity, because right now we are it almost hurts us to take on more material right now because of the economics around it. And so we need more profitable and affordable means of processing material locally.
Wow. Next question comes from Johanna Fullert. She says, the town of Poughkeepsie, New York applied for a grant to subsidize our pilot program for food scraps recycling in October 2023. We applied for a grant to subsidize our pilot program for food scraps. I'm sorry, I reread that. We applied through the grantsgateway.ny.gov. Is there a way to find out where we stand? Are we being considered? Can we find out when an answer will be given? I think that's a Neil question. Neil, would you like to?
Yeah. Hi, Joanna. Good to have you on the call. I think that's a question that will be addressed at tomorrow's webinar that Gary Liss on our team will be presenting. I do want to point out, however, that as important as this federal funding is, I think $4.6 billion is quite considerable, both in Cleveland and Baltimore and many other places. The initial capital came from the local area, and there are specialists in GoFundMe. Michael Schumann is one of them. I'd be happy to give information on how people can get in touch with him. So as I said, that will be answered tomorrow. Let me say one other thing, since Joanna is from Dutchess County, where I'm working to help shut down an incinerator, and the same in Westchester County, which is very close by. And that's why I was thankful that Kenny and Marvin put incineration in the compost in that context. And in both of these counties, there are towns, and in each town there are citizens like Dan, like Kenny, like Marvin, who have actually started composting, and they're petitioning their respective counties, Westchester and Dutchess counties, to provide that infrastructure support that Dan alluded to and Marvin alluded to as well. And I do believe that the compost revolution, which I call it, is going to succeed because of the attention paid at the local level and the ability to start these projects with very small resources. We need resources to expand them, but that they can get started early. And I want to say one other thing about the economy of scale of composting. We all know that the recycling revolution in the United States, which happened in the late 1960s, early 1970s, took our country to 35% recycling within 30 years, by the year 2000. And at that point, we have stagnated with regard to recycling. We've been at 35%. We dipped down a little to 32, but we're back up to 35. The point is that I believe that monopoly control over the system, landfill, hauling, as well as recycling processing, has basically put a cap on recycling at 35%. But I do not see that happening with composting because of the economy of scale and because it's impossible to monopolize the composting industry. And I think the great hope is that composting will continue to soar, continue to impact landfills and incineration. And the energy that we've seen here today is just one example in 2 cities. But this energy is mobilizing people all across the country for the very common sense reasons that have been presented by our friends in Baltimore and Cleveland.
So Rachel Hutto from North Carolina is a composting professional right here where I live. And she has a question: how do you find locations for drop sites? Did partners donate the access, or do you have to pay leases for those sites to exist? Who'd like to go first?
Wait, Daniel, you can start now. I'll finish up.
Okay. Yeah, we often we try and partner with like affinity organizations. So we have a really great parks system in and around Cleveland called the Metro Parks, and so by meeting with them, we said, hey, do you want more foot traffic? Do you want more people visiting the parks? If so, I've got a great idea. Let's put a drop-off location there, right? I think that we have a pretty clear rubric and criteria for where we want drop-off locations. They should be accessible by public transit. They should be available and accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They should be well lit. They should be plowed and shoveled around. And so often these are managed parks, schools, libraries, which is all to say that we invite partnership with community-based organizations that want to see more foot traffic. In exchange, our bins get to live there at no cost. Yeah, they'd sort of donate the space because they're seeing more patrons, they're seeing more visitors, they're seeing the alignment and affinity between our members and their work.
Marvin?
Office of Sustainability and DPW has done an amazing job with providing drop-off centers throughout Baltimore. We have 2 at our local farmers market, where it goes to Paul's Hog Farm, where the hogs eat the scraps. They bring the material back that the hogs that they've created from the manure from the hogs to grow fresh fruits and vegetables. And they bring back the people who do eat meat to bring those hogs back to the farm to be able to be sold. We also have drop-off stations at the DPW drop-off locations where residents can go. What we are concentrating on is working with those disenfranchised communities who cannot afford to go to the farmers market, who cannot get to the DPW drop-off stations because of the high cost of an Uber or public transportation. So we're going to provide education along with free compost drop-off for those residents, where we can educate them about where their trash goes, what happens to it when it gets to its final destination, and how it affects the citizens of Baltimore City. So we're making a concentrating effort of getting into those disenfranchised communities and educating and providing drop-offs for them so that everybody can participate, because our goal is to create an inclusive composting table for Baltimore City.
Let me add to this point. Developments in Detroit. We mentioned Renee Wallace, Michelle Jackson, and Deborah Stewart Anderson. One of the strategies there is that the city is allowing community groups and individuals to buy vacant lots and dedicate them for composting, and that is a strategy of Michelle's group, Sustainable Community Farms. The other important thing, and this is a question to both Marvin and Dan, when you set up a satellite drop-off facility that you service, how do you maintain quality control on that site from problems of dumping, improper dumping, people bringing in their organics in plastic bags and throwing the plastic bag in the compost section? How do you manage that quality control? Dan first.
So Dan, if I can get started.
Go ahead, Marvin. Sure.
Oh, no, it's fine. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, start it. Go ahead.
No problem. Yeah. We are intentional. We're intentional once again at spreading compost fever through the variant of education, educating our clients. We know that people have great intentions, so we don't leave a compost bin there. If we have a drop off that day, we hire young people to work as the ambassadors for that drop-off site. So we don't we do signage, make sure it's signage, and like I say, it's all about educating because people have great intentions. Oh, we'll drop this off for Marvin, he'll come pick it up. But as long as you are constantly keeping them engaged, keeping them involved in the process, and once again, not allowing them to leave it because people who have great intentions, and that's how you wind up having dumping at your site when you don't have supervision there to be able to give people the best practice on how to run a drop-off site.
Yeah, we take a slightly different approach. I think it could be improved upon, but it works for now. I'd love to think with anybody on this call about how to improve it. But so our drop-off locations, we sort of recognize that everybody has different schedules. People are night owls. Some people don't work during the days, do at night. And so we thought it was really important that people have 24-hour access to these drop-off locations so that they could use it at a time that was convenient to them. The way that we solved for that was that we put a locking mechanism on all of our bins. And as a member, when you sign up and you keep your membership current with us, you get access to a four-digit combination to unlock a secure bin. And so through that, we're able to, manage communications directly with our members. We can do more targeted emails to the members that designate one location to be the primary drop-off location or over another. So if we're seeing heightened levels of contamination at, say, the Shaker Nature Center, we can send an email just to the people that drop off there and say, hey, guess what? Like styrofoam, not compostable. Please cut that out. And so, I think that, contamination is not a fun thing. It's really the bane of a lot of composters' existence. But, I think that we estimate that our contamination rates have been right around like 3 to 5%, which compared to like the recycling industry is far lower. And so I think that we really lean into the idea that like this is an opt-in thing. So we have a coalition of the willing, and people are paying for it, so they got some skin in the game. And so so that's how we get around. We're trying to address and get out ahead of contamination.
Thank you both. Chris, did you have more questions?
I certainly do. Let me see if I can start here with Carla Doty. She has a statement. In Providence, we work with community libraries, groceries, and schools for drop-off sites. Librarians are the best. Librarians are the best. Mary Ellen Sullivan asks, has anyone had to deal with cities considering on or rolling out anaerobic digestion as a composting waste process vis-a-vis the composting?
Yeah, we have. There's a network of anaerobic digesters around Northeast Ohio, and I mean, I think that like I would not be consistent if I didn't say that like to remain consistent, saying that we need more infrastructure for food waste diversion necessarily in my mind needs to include anaerobic digestion. Do I think it's as good as composting? No. Do I think it creates as many jobs as composting does? No. Does it have the a worse environmental life cycle assessment? Yes. And so I think that like those are the kinds of conversations that we're trying to have. And so I think that like, you know, when you look at an AD system can cost upwards of $300 million, divert just as much material as we're diverting today, but won't create 30 jobs, and won't create a carbon sequestering product in the form of compost. So it, in my mind, AD is, anaerobic digestion is a step in the right direction that misses the point entirely, right? I think that it allows us to perpetuate a throwaway culture. It allows us to perpetuate energy consumption in the way that we have, whereas composting invites a new consideration of what a future world can look like. And I think that that can sometimes be challenging to people because it's not like the sexiest high technology Internet of Things thing. And yet I think getting back to the fundamentals is absolutely what we need right now.
Let me just add, it's quite timely because our next COOLNow webinar is going to have a discussion of anaerobic digestion with one of the nation's top experts, Craig Coker Composting. And we're also going to have Nora Goldstein from Biocycle to further this discussion. It's a big discussion in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. There's a digestion plant that is just coming online. It's very large, 120,000 ton per year capacity. And it could be a threat to small scale farmers and small businesses such as we've been talking about today. So we will be addressing that issue probably in April, in our April COOLNow webinar. Oh, please go ahead, Dan.
If I can, yeah. So I had the fortunate opportunity to go on a retreat with a number of really, really smart people in this space, including Michael Martinez, and I think of LA Compost. And I think that a thing to be aware of is how centered community composting is in this transition, right? I think that we need to obviously divert food from going to landfills, but if we're using the capital and the tools and technology of landfilling, we will not have a just transition. And I think that there's going to be and this is intentionally inflammatory language, but like there's going to be a colonialization mentality of food scraps because larger industry will see the inherent value in this resource that is inherently best stewarded by the communities that is generating it. And when it is extracted and taken away and quotas are written up as to who gets what and when, it will be anti-competitive, it will create monopolies, and it will not create the conditions for drawdown in the way that composting at a community level can.
Very well said, Dan. And I'll point out the plant I was referring to is located equidistant between Baltimore and Washington. And their game plan is to have these cities ship their valuable resources out of their cities to be digested. It's the same game plan as the big waste sets up for recycling. Inefficient single stream recycling that you have to ship 30, 40 miles outside of your community. You're exporting your jobs and you're exporting the wealth and the potential for value added. So we do appreciate the fact that composting is local and we should strive to keep it local.
Okay,
Chris,
there are a few other questions here. I want to start first, though, by saying some things that people have made, some statements people have made. Brenda Platt says the big digester Neil mentioned in Maryland, they're already lobbying against on-farm composting in the state. So that is also a thing to be looking at. Gary says the Zero Waste International Alliance has a policy statement about anaerobic digestion and composting that addresses some of the points that Dan made, although he made them much more pointedly and probably appropriately. Check out the link that Gary Liss put in the chat. And let's see, some of the questions that we've got here. Peter said earlier, what is the cost of landfill or incinerate for a ton of material in your cities? That is often the key metric that Gary pointed out with the Berkeley example.
Well, I could tell you that the tip fee at the incinerator in Baltimore is about $55 per ton. that is the competitive number, if you will, that composters would have to beat. On the other hand,
in Ohio, it's 35.
well, that makes it even harder. But we're talking about dollars. But I think it's very obvious from what Dan, Marvin, and Kenny have said that composting is more than dollars. It's food safety. It's climate control. If we monetize those values, of course, composting is quadruple the value of any tip fee. And that is why holistic evaluation of these facilities is critical. And if you, on the other hand, as I believe it was Kenny who pointed out that a study was done in Baltimore about 2 years ago from a very credible environmental research group that pointed out that the incinerator in Baltimore reduces the normal lifespan of residents. And because people are dying before their time, so to speak, that value has been monetized at $55 million a year. Now, that $55 million a year is not put on the side of the ledger of the incinerator. That is something that's absorbed by everyone through taxes and through suffering from disease, asthma, cancer, so forth. And I want to point out that that study just looked at one particular pollutant from the incinerator, and that was particulate matter. Other matters are gases, lead, cadmium, all kinds of horrible pollutants for which there is no safe level. And yet these incinerators are pumping these chemicals out 24/7, 365. So when we talk about the tip fee that composting has to beat, we're not just talking about the tip fee at an incinerator or a landfill. And at $35 a ton, it's going to be tough in Cleveland. It's going to be tough to beat that number just on economics alone.
Yeah, and I will say two things really quickly. One is I'm actually at the Greater Cleveland Sustainability Summit right now, so I got to run momentarily to be on a panel, so I apologize.
Sure, no problem.
But yeah, I just wanted to mention that if there are any community composters on the call other than Marvin and Kenny here, competing on economics alone is a losing battle. So I think that this whole idea of like we need to be competitive with landfilling is a totally false pretense to begin any conversation with. They have an abundance of infrastructure, tax dollars that are funding their thing. They are subsidizing the fully weighted cost of actual disposal at the cost of public health. And so we never try and compete on dollars. We try and compete on impact. We try and compete on attracting and retaining talent. We try and compete on marketing fodder, data and metrics that are going to give people information. We think about ourselves as a turnkey community investment solution for companies. And if they want to like compare our impact to the impact of whatever else their outreach community is doing, we're a better investment every time.
I have one more question that I would like to push on you guys, and then also an answer that was in the chat by one person. So I'll ask you to answer after I put the answer. Travis Carpenter asks, what are some of the talking points that can be used to convince people to start separating scraps in their homes in the first place? I recently did a presentation to Residents Council, and that was the major barrier for them, even though they agreed with the benefits of composting. And Carla Doty says, as a reply, our central landfill in Rhode Island is going to be full in a few short years. So that is that info has been the most compelling for people to learn this new composting habit. I always like to say that we aren't creating new trash. We're just putting food waste in the bucket instead of the trash. Trash can stays light and not stinky. People like that. So that is her suggestion. What are your responses? Dan, go first. You got to go.
Yeah, I'm gonna give my response. Then I gotta run. So I apologize. Yeah, my response is that like you're already throwing food away, right? It's just going into an inappropriate vehicle, right? Currently, it's going to your garbage is getting commingled. You're going to take it out. It's going to have a snail trail behind it, right? Like you're just doing it wrong, right? The correct way to do it is to put it into a bin that it's designed for food scraps. It won't smell. You're going to take it out, and it's going to provide a good benefit to your community. I think oftentimes the thing that like is the biggest barrier to people is concerns about odor and concerns about doing it correctly. On the topic of doing it correctly, I think that a thing I say is like if it's recently been alive, you can probably compost it. And on the topic of odors is that like if you like your garbage bin already has food scraps in it, so if it smells, it's because of that. If you put it in a separate bin and wash that bin, your whole waste management practice gets a lot cleaner entirely. So that's my feedback. I'm just going to say a quick thank you and a goodbye. I apologize for having to leave you guys early, but I really, really appreciate this opportunity. If anyone wants to connect with me, I'm going to leave my email address in the chat. Yeah, invite anybody to reach out. We'd love to have you out in Cleveland. And yeah, thanks for all the work that you and Kenny are doing in Baltimore. Keep up the good work.
I will visit you in Cleveland, and Dan, thank you so much for your time.
We're hosting the Community Composting Forum in October, so got to plug that.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
we'll be in touch, and thanks, Dan, for adding to the panel.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, Dan. Rick Anthony has a question.
Yeah, I was just going to call your attention to that.
Yeah, let me ask him to unmute and show his face, and I will spotlight him as well. Rick, go ahead.
These were great presentations, and I just wanted to comment that when I do my market studies around the country, both in Hawaii and Montana, the cost of finished compost was in the $100 range. So the point we need to make is that landfills is a sink. It's a cost. You got to replace it. You got to mitigate it. Yet with a composting program, even if it costs you $35 to process it, is worth a lot more money on the market side just to sell it. And somebody, Dan talked a little bit because he just mentioned it. I know it's sensitive, but the whole cannabis industry in the states that are now making it legal for recreation is a huge market for good finished compost. So it does cost a lot, but another thing that you can make in your argument when you do your grant is its value on the market is huge, and that cuts away a lot of that economic issue.
Yeah, I want to add that Rick mentioned that good compost can sell for as much as $100 a ton. Just to point out that 1 ton is roughly 3 cubic yards of compost material, give or take. Obviously, the volume changes as you go through your composting system. We are exactly at our 90 minutes. We are very happy to stay on as long as people are interested. I just wanted to respect the time of people who signed up just for the 90 minutes. So if you do have to go, thank you so much for participating. Please stay tuned for the future COOLNow webinars. We will invite you to those as we announce them. And another reminder for the climate pollution grant program tomorrow that will be headed up by Zero Waste USA's Gary Liss. I see that Gary is on the call. Gary, did you want to make a quick comment about the program tomorrow? Chris, could you unmute Gary?
Sure. Just to underscore, it's about federal grant programs. I think the point on this call was that a lot of the funding has come locally, either through private investment, like in Cleveland, or through the service participants contributing. But the federal grants is the emphasis tomorrow. They're not mutually exclusive. It's if you can get federal grants, they can enhance the ability to grow more rapidly. So those that are using existing service fees as the main focus, like in Baltimore, going after the federal grants is important. It's just there's so much money that's coming down for addressing climate change, circularity, and community investment, that it's an opportunity once in a lifetime. Literally, this is the first time in 50 years the federal government's making this type of investment in these significant infrastructure projects. Tomorrow, we also will have links about other federal grant programs as well. Besides the climate pollution reduction grants, we're emphasizing the climate pollution reduction grants because it is $4.6 billion, and the deadlines are coming up rapidly, March 1 and April 1, which we'll talk about more tomorrow. But great program today. Learned a lot and inspired by both of the programs. It's really great. Thanks.
I think inspired is the right word, Gary, and thanks for filling us in on the program tomorrow. Chris, did you have any other questions?
I do. I would like to hear from Marvin and Kenny about what their thoughts are about Travis's question. Please respond. I'd love to hear your feedback.
Chris, why don't you repeat the question for everyone?
Okay, I have to find it again. Please bear with me. Okay, the question was, what are some of the talking points that can be used to convince people to start separating scraps in their homes in the first place? I recently did a presentation to Residents Council, and that was the major barrier for them, even though they agreed with the benefits of composting.
One of the main key points I could say is one thing about the wind, it don't segregate or discriminate. We all breathing in bad air. They put like these bad institutions in our neighborhoods, but we all breathing in the same air. So that's one thing you could tell them, and you can also educate them about just how it can just change your life and just get you out of the house more, and learning about different microorganisms you ain't never know about, or just being in the dirt, just touching the dirt, touching something new, and just getting the workout. You don't have to go.
I want to mention, since Travis Carpenter made a comment, he is working with an organization, Westchester Alliance for Safe Solutions, WASS, and their interest in composting is directly tied to shutting down that county's incinerator, as we heard from Marvin and Kenny. So I just wanted to point that out, that as composting in Westchester moves forward, it's a point of education, as we've been hearing all day from Dan, Kenny, and Marvin. Any other questions, Chris?
I think we're at the end here.
I have a question. Excuse me.
Please go ahead, Joanna.
Hi, Neil and everyone. This was an excellent presentation. I am unfortunately unable to attend tomorrow. I have a dental appointment in White Plains, which is an hour away. And I'd like to know if your program tomorrow will be recorded and whether there will be a link available to those of us who cannot attend.
Yeah, absolutely, Joanna, and I will make sure that you and your colleagues get it. I just want to mention that Joanna is a member of Mothers Out Front, a great civic organization that is working with Zero Waste Dutchess to shut down that incinerator, and they are a wonderful ally. It's a national organization with local chapters. I just wanted to give a shout out to the work that Joanna and her colleagues are doing in Dutchess County.
Thank you, Neil. We need all the support we can get, and you're giving it to us. Thank you, and to all of you.
Joanna and others who can't join tomorrow's webinar, go ahead and register so that you will automatically receive the link after the event.
Excellent. I will do that. Thank you.
Neil, would you like to close?
I would like to close by saying that this program is a beginning. We learned a whole lot. We answered some technical questions, and of course, the compost movement is going to move forward. I anticipate more and more diversion. Composting will help us increase our recycling. overall recycling rate or diversion rate. And I want to thank all the participants who stayed with us, and two great presentations from Baltimore and Cleveland. And just to reiterate, I believe it's in October that there will be a national meeting of grassroots composters in Cleveland. We encourage all of you to attend, participate, and stay in touch with us for further information about our webinars and further information about composting through the COOLNow program. I will end by defining what zero waste is. It is a 90% or more reduction of the current waste stream, organics out of landfill, toxics out of products, and packaging. And with that, continue everyone their work on zero waste. It is the wave of the future. In fact, if we don't succeed, there might not be a future. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to seeing you on future webinars. And Chris, thank you for all your technical work. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I would like for you and Rick and I to stay on after, if we could. All right. Everyone, thank you everybody for being with us today, and be sure to attend the CPR webinar tomorrow.
Marvin and Kenny, I'll see you soon in Baltimore.
Sounds good. Thank you. Remember, compost, learn so you don't have to burn. Starve the incinerator, feed the soil, feed the community. We out. Thank you.
Thank you.